He was the most blunt. Didn't hold anything back. Laid it all out there.
Hi again, everybody. Welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlon Bowling with you. Thanks for joining us. Well, today I'm honored to bring aboard the founder of Comstock Investments, David Kruse. David, recently you had the chance to go on a trip with some other folks to Washington, D.C., and talk with our elected officials in D.C. and maybe some commodity groups. And I just wondered if you could give us a report on what you found out, because there's a whole lot changing now. We have a new Congress coming on board. We have a new administration coming on board. And in a little bit, we'll talk about some changes coming up in Canada as well now. So let's talk about that. What did you find out on that recent trip that you took to D.C.?
Well, from as far as the Washington D.C. goes, I was able to take part in a trip I'm a member of the Carbon Advisory Board, and we met with a number of congressional representatives and U.S. senators and their staffs, and I'd never done anything like that before. They were there advocating for carbon issues. I guess the CO2 pipeline, 45Z was the primary focus. Is trying to push them that when they take over the Republicans, that they don't throw 45Z out with the bathwater when they probably repeal that particular Inflation Act. We want them to keep that. It's very important to agriculture. And in general, I came home more impressed than I thought I would be with the congressmen and our representatives. Uh, I don't know what I had guessed that they would have as far as a level of knowledge, but it exceeded my expectations. All of them that we visited with all of Iowa's representatives. Dusty Johnson from South Dakota was probably my favorite. One from Illinois, also Nebraska, and they were all extremely well tuned into the issues that we're dealing with. And I guess I'm pretty far away from DC and them from us, and I suppose it was just right after an election cycle too, where they'd all been home and talking to a lot of constituents, and so we're maybe better informed than sometimes. But generally, I was impressed, and we came away with a pretty good feeling that they understood what we were up against in agriculture, and some of the things that we really needed, and I don't know what the actual impact will be when you get into next year and they start sorting out some of these issues. But the first thing that was the lame duck session of Congress. They have to wait for that particular session when there's some of the representatives that are leaving Congress. They can vote the way they really want to, and they get some things done. And one of those things was an extension of the Farm Bill. It took that for that to happen. That's it's a good thing. It's not so good from the aspect that the current farm bill has been already extended, and it's pretty obsolete. It needs to be revised. But still getting to the political compromise level that it takes to get a farm bill, they aren't there yet. And I'm questioning whether the new Congress will get there in the time frame we'd like them to as well. Farm bills have basically been a product of the urban side and the food programs that are in a farm bill, which are actually most of the highest percentage of the funding, and then of course the farm state representatives, and it has been a compromise between those two that has created farm bills. I'm not convinced that partnership is going to continue, and I don't think that the Republicans probably have a large enough majority to pass a Republican farm bill, and so it's probably still not going to be the one quite that they want. But they say they're going to move ahead and try and get it done now. And in this first interim period, I think the president wants a farm bill. The farmers have been a strong constituent of his, and I think he'll be supportive of that. But so time will tell. The one thing else that they did is they did pass a farm aid bill. I think, what is it, $3 an acre for corn and $30 or so for soybeans. I guess I have mixed emotions when it comes to that. Every time it seems like that we end up with margin compression or negative margins, we go back to Washington, D.C. for the piggy bank. And all our representative groups, the Corn Growers, Soybean Association, Farm Bureau, they work very hard to get us this subsidy and funding, and it's sort of how they measure their value. But I don't see that as the solution to anything. In other words, what we need is things that what build demand. We have a long-term productivity positive trend. Yields go up every year, and at the same time, we're struggling in the export world with all the trade issues and stuff that are floating around. And so biofuel is the thing that we can make decisions on that will have a long-term impact on us. And that's where the disappointment came when they ended up passing their CR, or continuing resolution for funding the government until March. There was 3 tries at it. The first 2 had year-round nationwide E15 in it. And when it came to the one that passed, in the end, it had been removed. The biofuel industry was frankly infuriated. And I don't know that I want to get into all the details about how and why that happened, but first of all, they give us $10 billion, but that by leaving out the E15 nationwide situation, every percent that we increase our national ethanol intake, it equals about 1.4 billion gallons of ethanol, and that translates to about 500 million bushels of corn. Well, personally, I don't, and then that's every year after that, and we don't know. It might be, it might more than 1% or whatever. Right now, we're about an E10 standard. How close to E15 can we eventually get in a few years if it's nationwide? We could probably add 2-3%. That's adding real demand that's for the long term, and so we don't need their damn money. What we need is their damn cooperation, I guess, is the way, and we need them to do things that allows us to build our market. That goes back to the 45Z rules. Those are things that the biofuel industry needs to be able to plan ahead. And then, of course, the CO2 pipelines. The people I was with on the CO2 pipeline situation were representatives of a lot of ethanol plants and things that were connected to this new pipeline if it's finished. And as a general statement, they said that all of these companies, ethanol plants that were connected, have plans on the drawing board to expand between 20 and 100% a lot of them the day 45Z comes out, when they approve that. And if you can imagine the impact, all these ethanol plants are going to go full capacity. The one I was with said they were going to double their capacity. They were going to double 100 million gallons. It was going to go to 2. That's where we actually meet up with our productivity and demand, so we don't need $40 an acre every time the margins don't come out, and then also as we look ahead to all these other risks that we have coming, tariffs and immigration deportations, the ag sector's got some real hurdles to basically figure out how to traverse here in the next few months. And so it was a very interesting trip. Didn't get ultimately what we wanted from at least the expansion of the E15 nationwide. But we're going to go back again and have another continuing resolution in March. And there were the 2 that I believe was Nunn from Iowa and Bacon from Nebraska were the 2 that put it into the first 2 bills for the funding that would include the E15 mandate. Or no, it's not a mandate. Excuse me, wrong word. I slapped myself for saying that. It's just, it allows consumer choice is what it does. Allows them to market it, and I think they'll come back again, and even more from the Midwest that say they aren't going to fund that continuing resolution unless this is in it. And that is what it takes.
David, who do you think was most knowledgeable when your group spoke to the members of Congress about the airline fuel, the SAF possibility of demand for biofuels moving forward? What do you think about that? Are they pretty well versed on that on capital?
They are. I was surprised that you say who they all were. If I had to maybe the biggest surprise was Congresswoman Miller Meeks from Iowa. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with her. She's not in my district. She had a very close reelection over in eastern Iowa, and she knows her stuff. I was surprised, yeah, at her. One was my favorite. I mentioned was probably Dusty from Johnson from South Dakota. That was just because he was the most blunt. Didn't hold anything back. Just laid it all out there. And so I liked him probably the best.
Okay, we have new developments, and we kind of talked about this before we started recording here. But I see on the newswire where apparently Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced his resignation. Oh boy. So we're going to have a new administration coming into office here in a few days. Now Canada is looking at new leadership. Um, do you think that's going to
I
turn
do
the
think it's
attitudes
good.
around, or what do you think?
It is good because, frankly, President Trump didn't really respect Trudeau. He thought he was weak. He was weak. He's been terrible in the polls, and the economics in Canada have gone south. Their dollar is continuing to weaken against ours. It's, what is it, 70 cents to the dollar now. And this tariff threat was going to be a real problem to them, likely a recession. And it was time for a change up there. And so this will be an opportunity then for the Canadians to chart a new path, to go in a different direction. And I think that if I get the name right, I think it's Pierre Poilievre is the conservative leader, and he will be then therefore likely the next prime minister, if unless there's some other surprise that comes from this. And he's very articulate, and I've actually listened to him. My family was first Canadian before they were American, so I've had a little connection up there. I've been up there a few times and things like that, tracking the family history. And I've been rather shocked at how actually bad things are in Canada. And we could get into detail what it is, but their housing situation is horrible. They did things. They made some huge mistakes in how they set up their loans. I'm going to give you an example. Like my home loan, probably yours too, is on a fixed rate, and that fixed rate lasts till the end of the term, whatever it is. If it's 20, 25, 30 years, whatever it is. In Canada, they maybe have a 25-year loan, but the interest rate is only fixed for 3 to 5 years, and a lot of homes were bought 3 to 5 years ago, and they're all now poised to reset. And all of a sudden, these people's home mortgage payment is going to jump substantially, and that's going to create quite a turmoil and angst up there against. They're going to have their own housing and financial crisis. The other type of loan that was used significantly in Canada that thank goodness we don't have is that it was a fixed payment. In other words, that your monthly payment's $2,000, and but it's a variable interest rate. And so when interest rates double, the amount of that payment then going to pay the interest, it takes almost all of the payment. And so you don't pay any of the principal. And so what happens is that the term of your loan just continues to extend and extend indefinitely. And so therefore they have a major problem here that's looming right in the face. They have seen a huge amount of capital move from Canada to the United States. That's part of this weak dollar business. No one wants to invest up there, and understandingly why. And even now, they need lower interest rates. Their interest in all likelihood, ours are going to remain at a premium to theirs, which, do you want to invest in that mess up there? Or do you bring your money to the United States and put it into a treasury bill? All we talk about bad about ourselves in the United States, many times Americans do, and all the speeches you hear, we are in fantastic shape compared to Canada. Let's put it that way.
Let me get your impression on this. My impression of Canada over the last quite a few years is that the farmers are mainly in the western half of the country, and they continually get outvoted all the time by the eastern half of the country, where the metro areas are,
Yeah.
and that seems to be what calls all the shots. And they really hardly ever get their way in farm country out there in Canada. I just wonder if you think this will maybe help that to change a little bit. Do you think farmers will now finally get a better voice?
I would expect so because I think the conservatives they reflect that attitude more. But Canada is fractionalized in 3 or 4 different ways. One of them is that most of the wealth is in Manitoba and Alberta. It's the oil, and the whole country is living off of that up there. And the folks in those provinces would there's 30 some or almost 40% of them would like to succeed from Canada. So when Trump makes the offer for them to become another state, there's a lot of folks in Western Canada that would vote yes for that. Ottawa or where the capital is, but they basically they control the money that's made in the West. Quebec is they got their own language and their own culture, and they too are they take from the rest of the provinces to support that one, and then there's the maritime provinces, and so I think that actually Canada would probably have to break up into 4 states, but yeah, the farm sector too also is the productive part of Canada too, and all the people that are producing there feel that they're being taken advantage by other places in the country that are not.
This looks very interesting to me. So, where we have a new incoming administration, Canada will too. We have a new Congress. Everything's probably going to change, and to me, that means our trade agreements probably will be adjusted a little bit too here in the coming year.
Well, right after Trump announced the 25% tariff on Canada, Trudeau immediately went to Mar-a-Lago, but then that all was sort of just Photoshop, photo op, I guess. But then the finance and the Secretary of State of Canada came down later and had secondary meetings, and I'm sure that's where discussions got going there. And I think it became pretty obvious to Trudeau that he can't traverse this with Trump, and so they've got to back off and try it again. And there's been others in Canada. I guess Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary, excuse me, he has been pretty vocal that he doesn't really see great prospects for them being the 51st state, but he would like to join us in an economic union. And he also wants to go to Mar-a-Lago and discuss this idea with Trump, where I guess that we would I don't know exactly how the particulars of how this would transpire, but ultimately we become more the form of a European Union, and that we would have the same currency and probably even same passport. That's what he's advocating for. Canada has tremendous resources, both the oil and water, and they have been very reluctant to share their water. And I think that this kind of a crisis situation could be advantageous for us as far as negotiation, with maybe getting some access to Canadian water.
The U.S. and Canada, they have the longest existing friendly border in the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they do. They have excess capacity electricity, and like I said, a lot of natural minerals and stuff up there that we need. Some of these more rare earths and such, and there are reasons for us to get closer together, and I hope that they can have some negotiations that comes up with something a little bit different. And then maybe also the Arctic is that's the one thing too, is the Arctic is becoming extremely important to us, and the Canadians, their military is at the bottom end of NATO relative to contributing to the 2% that Trump says that we need for that organization. They're like 1.3 or 4. And they right now their current plans are it would take till like 2032 before they would reach 2%. Well, a lot of where that comes important to us is that they aren't taking care of the Arctic. Russia is new bases, a lot of things up there, and actually so is China is making a lot of efforts to get a presence in the Arctic. Well, Canada basically controls the Northwest Passage, and that is as more ice melts in the Arctic, is going to be more and more usable all the time through the year. That also means that what is it, a 40% less shorter route coming from Asia to the United States or the European markets coming around and going even through the Panama Canal, and so that becomes an issue for that. And so it's all sort of connected, but Canada is strategic in that effort, and I think that in the integration of our militaries, they would be something that could be on the table. We've always appreciated the Canadian military. They've won every place we went, even if we were stupid going there. They were always there with us anyway. So they've been good allies and on that part. But their management of their domestic economic situation has been dismal. I think we were discussed earlier during the before we started this report. I mentioned that Canadian per capita GDP income is about 70% of an American's, and there's no reason for that other than that. I suppose it's partly their socialism. They get free education and they get free health care, but it's not free. It's sapped their productivity so badly that they make us look fantastic, as far as economic power.
It's going to be a fascinating month and a
It will be.
fascinating year, and we're already off to a crazy start. Thanks for helping to take a look at things in D.C. and north of the border from your perspective. I appreciate your insight. I'll be checking back in with you from time to time. We'll see how things progress as we go deeper into the year. That's David Kruse, the founder of Comstock Investments, with us here. And we thank you for joining us. Appreciate that very much. For our producer, Brianne Jenkins, I'm Marlon Bowling. We'll catch you next time right here on the Comstock channel. Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.